So, real quick, before we get into the episode of the show, I want to run something past you that I've been working on for now a couple of days, okay? In the world of nicknames, if we happen to like nicknames, I don't mind nicknames personally, if they're in good faith, of course, right? If we're using it as a term of endearment, I don't mind a nickname. When we're talking about Lou Anarumo, how about a couple nicknames I have come up with right here? Number one that I've been using, Smooth Lou, okay? For those of you who watch basketball, maybe you've heard of, it was Lou Williams, right? And we know what he was able to bring on the court, the slick handle, the smooth jump shot. They called him Smooth Lou for a reason. So perhaps we have a Smooth Lou at head coach. Or here's the next one right here. And I think this one perhaps a little more egregious, a bit more out there, and perhaps a little more flamboyant, if you will. So maybe not everyone's going to love it, but he is from Staten Island. I'm a native New Yorker myself, so I would love to pay homage. What if we called him Lou Gabagoo, huh? Do we like that nickname for Lou Anarumo? Or we could just call him Coach Lou or Lou Anarumo, right? We can do that as well. Either way, and by the way, for those of you guys watching, I don't need glasses to read. These are fake, kind of just a prop for the bit right there. But that's neither here nor there. Audio listeners are like, what the heck is this guy talking about? But no matter what it is that we want to call him, okay, and I think I will probably just switch in and out of the nicknames as I please. So we got to hear from Smooth Lou for the very first time. For those of you who missed it, yesterday was his introductory press conference, media availability, whatever word you want to put there to describe that. We got to hear from Lou yesterday for really a pretty extended period of time. What was that, like 10, 15, 20 minutes? I mean, it felt like a pretty lengthy press conference. Now, I know realistically, you're not really able to take anything away from that, okay? Like, if one person watches that press conference and says, oh, I loved everything he had to say, and then the next person says he was low energy and uninspiring, ultimately, neither takeaway is all that meaningful in the grand scheme of things. Like, they may be valid observations, but overall, it's not like those are actually something that we can use to project his quality as a defensive coordinator and what we expect to see from him with the Indianapolis Colts. Like, an introductory presser, while of course exciting for us to listen to as we bring in a new coach, is much like Seinfeld, right? It's a show about nothing. Like, he comes in, he says a bunch of things that make pretty good sense because he's a fucking NFL coach, right? Like, he says we want a smart, physical, fast football team, just like every other defensive coordinator that's ever been hired for any team ever. And then we sit there and we pretend that we learned something about him. But the reality is that we don't quite know who this guy is yet. We're going to be getting to know Smooth Lou as time goes on. But that being said, we can look at what it is we know about him previously and use that as some sort of projection and kind of, I don't know, use that to say, hey, how is that going to help the team? That's what we can do. We can use the past experience and use that. The introductory presser is really just an excuse to talk about Smooth Lou. And not for anything, I'm quite all right with that. Like, sure, we know he's the mad scientist. He game plans for the week ahead. He's flexible in his formations and his play calling, right? The opposite of Gus Bradley in many ways. He tries to ensure that the opposing offense, quarterback, play caller are consistently having to play chess with him, as opposed to just kind of hoping his overall defensive philosophy works against every single offense they face, right? Great. That's all good and well. We've all said that. We all know that now. It's been a week. But what else is there to discuss? Like, what is he bringing to the Colts other than a good game plan against Patrick Mahomes? Like, how is Lou Anarumo going to help the Colts on the day today? Are there some benefits to bringing him on that we may not be discussing? Well, for those of you who have been here, you know that if I'm asking the questions, you know damn well that I have the answer to those questions. In fact, there are two things that I think Lou Gabagoo is bringing to the Colts that may be going under the radar. And we're going to talk about what they are. But before we do, you know what it is? I have to introduce myself. My name is Justin. This right here is the Riding the Bench Colts podcast. As always, I ask anyone watching and enjoying the show, go ahead, shoot a like. It's going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. Of course, subscribe if you want to be a part of the journey. We're on the quest to 3,500 right now. 5,000 is the big goal. But if we could get to 4,000, we're modifying things over here, right? We're moving the goalpost. If we could get to 4,000 subscribers by the start of next season, that would be incredible. So if you keep coming back and joining the show, or perhaps this is your first time here and you're liking what you're hearing, might be a good time to subscribe. Of course, audio listeners, leave a five-star review. Let the people know how much you like the show. Really, if you're listening to the audio version, leave that 5-star review. I'm starting to see Not that the numbers are all that matters, but it's nice to know that if I'm going to sit here and take the time to talk about the Colts with you guys, that the discussion gets heard by more people. And we're starting to see the audio numbers go up a little bit and up a little bit and up a little bit, but we want more. We want more, right? You ever see that clip with Vince McMahon? You guys watch WWE at all? He's like, I have an insatiable appetite for life, and I want more, more, more. Woo. I'm in character and probably had a couple too many cups of coffee this morning. But either way, yeah, be civil in the comment section, all that shit. And let's get back to the topic at hand before I completely lose my mind in this episode. Okay, so I said that there were two ways that I feel that Lou Anarumo is going to help the Indianapolis Colts that we're not already talking about. We're going to take them in sequential order. Now, to be clear, these aren't things that I know are going to happen for sure, okay? It just seems reasonable that he would contribute in these two ways. And again, just want to bring them to your attention. But one of them is earlier in the offseason, so we're going to start there. And one of them is the later part of the offseason, so we'll get there second. So, reason number one, or way number one that he's helping I don't fucking know. You get the topic. You understand what I'm doing here, okay? Despite having mentioned the defensive line, for those of you guys that listen to the press conference, someone essentially asked, is there any one unit on your defense that has to be kind of sharp and particularly good for this thing to perform at its highest level? I always paraphrase. I have no direct quotes, okay? And he mentioned the defensive line. Like, if you're playing good up front, that's going to go a long way in helping your defense perform at a high level. And it's important for us, despite the fact that he said that, and I think we're all excited about what potentially Latu can do in this defense, having seen the success of a Trey Hendrickson, even though it's not like just because Hendrickson was good, Latu's going to be good. At the same time, Latu, the piece on this defense, right? We look at the defense. I'm going to keep hammering this point home. We look at this defense. We talk about potentially missing some personnel. If Latu takes a leap, this thing starts to look very, very different. But that is a digression and potentially a discussion for another day, perhaps even another little tidbit in the next episode. But back on topic. Justin, stay on topic. What the heck are you doing today? Okay, so all the talk about the defensive line and guys like Trey Hendrickson and how maybe Latu can kind of fit into that role, if you will. I don't know how accurate of an analysis that is, but nonetheless, what we can't forget is that his background before he was a defensive coordinator was as a defensive backs coach, okay? His entire resume prior to being a defensive coordinator from 1990 at Syracuse all the way to 2019 with the Cincinnati Bengals when he got hired as the defensive coordinator. That's damn near 30 freaking years as a defensive backs coach. Why is that relevant? Well, what has Chris Ballard had a tough time drafting as the general manager of the Colts? Where have we consistently had deficiencies on this defense? Corner, right? Corner. Like, I can't think of a single good pick that Chris Ballard has made at corner. Not one. Like, it's been a clear and obvious weak point. Even a Jalen Jones, that would be the one guy, and I love Jalen Jones. I really do. But Chris Ballard doesn't even take the credit for that pick. He credits Anthony Coughlin, who's a Southwest regional scout for the Colts, or at least was at the time that they drafted him. I'd be lying if I said I keep up with every single scout that they have in the front office because, like, you know, come on, right? I'm only one guy. Maybe if I had a team of people. So at least, right, that was what the hell am I saying? Dude, I can't even stay on track today. Okay, yeah, he basically said that Anthony Coughlin fought like a dog to get Jalen Jones onto the Colts. So given that, we really don't have all that much evidence that Chris Ballard is a good evaluator of talent at that specific position. You think about the Quincy Wilsons, the Rocky Sins, Juju Brents has been a bad pick so far due to nothing else but injury. Point being is we've put a bunch of second-round picks into that position and really have next to nothing to show for it. So maybe Smooth Lou can come in and perhaps with all of his years of experience coaching that position and all the great corners that he has coached, perhaps he's a much-needed eye in the scouting process for the cornerback position in the draft. We'll have to see if that turns out to be true. I don't know, but that could very well be the case. Figured it was an interesting point to bring up. So now for the other thing that I think that Lou is going to help with, and it goes back to his scheme, right? His play calling, his mad scientific ways, if you will, right? But from a different lens. Because we talk so much about how it's going to help our defense perform against opposing offenses, but how about how it's potentially going to challenge our young quarterback and force him to be better? Because I know we all know this, like this is an obvious thing, but sometimes the most obvious things are the things you forget about within your analysis. Our offense is going to be practicing against this Lou Anarumo defense. So if Lou is a bit more proactive, a bit more tactical, a bit more thoughtful in the way he calls plays on defense as compared to a Gus Bradley, I mean, right? Lou is used to versing a Joe Burrow-led offense in practice. So that's going to force our quarterback and our coach to be even better during those moments in practice. So Lou's going to know whether or not this offense is trending up or if it's trending down. And hopefully he could be an asset in ensuring that they stay on track. So there's so much talk about Anthony Richardson working with Chris Hess, right? The guy who worked with Josh Allen, who Josh Allen cites as the most important person in his mechanical career or progression or whatever the heck he said in regards to Chris Hess, right? And Anthony Richardson is working with him in hopes of having some sort of transformation similar to that of a Josh Allen, in hopes of establishing a foundation of mechanics in his throwing motion, right? As a thrower that can be duplicated play after play after play, even in high stress, action packed moments, or in other words, within the speed of the game. But of course, when it comes to playing quarterback in the league, that's just going to be one side of it. The other side of it is that he has to see different looks and he has to be a problem solver. He needs himself to be a bit of a mad scientist, much like they call Lou Gabagoo, right? When being able to process a defense, or when trying to process a defense, when you're playing against a guy like Gus Bradley, you may be able, in the course of a practice, to get a little bit comfortable in what it is that you're seeing. And then the game time comes, and the other team is making you think far more than Gus Bradley was, and things can begin to unravel very, very quickly. Like, it's only natural at his age and his experience level that would happen. But perhaps Lou, Smooth Lou, has him a bit more prepared for some of those more complex looks that a defense might give him on a week-to-week basis. Like, a lot of times when you talk about how an NFL team is going to practice, the closest thing an offense is going to see to the opposing defense on that given week is the scout team coming out and trying to mimic some of the looks that they expect the upcoming opponent to give. But generally, when the best players on your defense are out there, so if you're the offense versus your defense, and now if you're Anthony Richardson and you're looking across and you have Zaire Franklin, you have DeForest Buckner, you have Grover Stewart, you have all these guys on the defensive side of the ball, they're going to try to run their own defense, right? So when you're looking at the best talent out there, they ultimately have a game plan to execute themselves, and that's what they're going to be practicing. So while the scout team may have helped prepare for that given week, there is a level that muscle that Anthony Richardson needs to work, if that's what you would want to call it, but that the way the gears would shift in the brain. Like, they didn't have to work quite as hard against the top talent on the Colts than maybe they will now with Lou Anarumo. Like, when that defense is out there now in practice, Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen at that are really going to have to figure things out. So from that perspective, I do think that this hiring can pay some dividends, perhaps just forcing Anthony Richardson to be a bit more outside of his comfort zone in practice more often, which is really, again, separate from Shane Steichen, because Shane Steichen's going to call the plays on offense. But what is the defense doing to force your quarterback to work? Well, Lou Anarumo, on a week-to-week basis with the starting unit, is going to make sure that Anthony Richardson has to figure things out. And also, by the way, just on a side note before we end the show, Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen, if by any chance you're listening to this show, okay, make Anthony Richardson use that damn VR headset that Jaden Daniels is using before everyone starts doing. I have never in my life heard of such a good idea for quarterbacks to practice, okay? For those of you who haven't heard, I'm going to keep pounding it home because I want to make sure that you guys know about this, because one day every single young quarterback is going to be doing this to practice, because ultimately, if you're able to simulate game reps with a virtual reality headset on your face, okay? If you're able to get game reps, in theory, mentally, without actually playing in the game, that has never been able to be done in the history of football. You have a guy in Jaden Daniels who did it every single day during his rookie year and made an NFC championship, okay? Have Anthony Richardson do the same thing before it's too late. Give him an advantage before it becomes kind of like a college degree, in the sense that now all the young people coming up in 20, 30 years, a college degree is going to essentially be worthless because what was once a commodity, now everybody is doing. The VR headset, much the same. Get him on that trend early. I promise you, between that and Chris Hess, and God willing his health, we'll see big things out of Anthony Richardson if all of those things can come together. But that right there was the episode. Like, subscribe if you have not yet. But until next time, my name is Justin. This right here was the Riding the Bench Colts podcast. And as always, go Colts.